Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
Hey there, gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scot McKay, at Scot McKay on Twitter and Clubhouse, Real Scot McKay on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube by searching Scot McKay, my name. MountaintopPodcast.com is the website, and the Facebook group, as always, a thriving group of men who are like-minded, who want the best women in their life and want to be the best men they can be, is Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. Today, we're going to talk about something that, frankly, you guys have been asking me to cover for quite a long time. And as I've said in the past, sometimes it's just prudent to wait till I have the quintessentially perfect guest to discuss a certain topic before we delve into it. This is one of those occasions. And my new friend's name is Bobbi Bidochka. She's from Montreal, Canada. We've had some Canadians on this show lately, haven't we? And the name of her book is Sexual Intelligence in Business. And what we're going to talk about today, gentlemen, ready? Drum roll, is navigating the workplace relative to sexuality. Okay? So, we've talked about sexual harassment and the Me Too era ad nauseum around here. This is going to be a little bit different of a discussion. So without any further ado, Bobbi Bidochka, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. What's the weather like in Montreal? Getting a little warmer there yet?
It is warming up and the snow is melting, and I'm super happy because then I can leave the house.
How's the COVID lockdown thing going in Montreal?
Yeah, we're the precipice of Canada, so we're still on curfew, although they extended it from 8 p.m. to 9:30, woohoo, although there's nowhere to go, so I don't see the point. But in any case, slowly but surely, we're going to get there.
Well, here's hoping for you guys, because, Texas got allegedly opened up a couple weeks ago, and yet we're not. Because everybody basically individually vetoed that order, and everybody's still masking up and social distancing, which I think we should. But I'm hoping you guys at least get out of the house up there in Montreal, because you do seem to me a very social person. And indeed, your entire gig in terms of sexual intelligence in business, Bobbi, is all about helping men and women feel better about being sexual human beings in the workplace. And, I guess the best place to kick this off in terms of the meat and potatoes of this particular show, as it were, would be to talk about how men have been led to believe that simply being a heterosexual male in the year 2021 and going to work is an act of violence. And your position would be, and I think rightfully so, that, hey, you know what? Men and women, all of us, we're sexual human beings. We kind of can't help it. There's no such thing as being neuter in the workplace. So why pretend? The first thing I would want to ask you is, what would you say to anybody, man, woman, or otherwise, frankly, who would kind of say, you know what? Any act of being sexual at all in a workplace environment is inherently violent, and you should just stop. I mean, that's kind of a softball, but go ahead and hit it out of the park, Bobbi.
So yeah, you definitely have it right, Scott. We are sexual creatures by nature. In fact, it is my opinion, and research backs this up, that sex, relationships, love is the most important thing to human beings, hands down. Everything else comes from that. And so the fact that we are, in a situation now where we're trying to separate certain parts of ourselves, as if, you can just give up all of your sexuality at 9 a.m. when you walk into work, and then you bring it back at 5. Like, this is a very bizarre thing to ask of humans. Like, you can't separate that. And so I think historically sex has been taboo, or some people think that it is, even though if you look around, it's in everything. It's in our music. It's on TV. We talk about it. We talk about it ad nauseum, as you said, in all aspects. It's everywhere. So pretending like sex is taboo and it's somehow in this dark, undiscovered realm, it's not. It's highly researched. It's highly discussed. It's everywhere you look. And it is everywhere you look because it's important to us. It's an important aspect. It's critical. And so what we want to do is create environments like the workplace where you don't have to feel shame and guilt for being the sexual beings that we are.
I've seen sociological research, Bobbi, that indicates, okay, I don't know if it proves anything, but it sure seems believable from this perspective, that just about everything men in particular do is designed to make us more likely to procreate. It's all about attracting women. Guys will buy the Lamborghini, get the job, buy the clothes, listen to the music, do the thing, whatever it is, just because they want to get chicks, whatever it is. And I was talking about this very fact with a guy I'm coaching the other day, and we were laughing at how many more Porsche 911 turbos with convertible tops and automatic transmissions are sold in the United States than the GT3 model, which is the performance model with the more Spartan race-ready gear in it, which only proves more men buy a $160,000 Porsche to pose for chicks than they do because they're car guys. I mean, I think that's an example of what you're talking about, right?
Well, I mean, the people have been studying biology and sexual biology for decades and decades. If you take even just the example of The Red Queen, the book The Red Queen, A Billion Wicked Thoughts, like these books are fundamentally describing the science behind what drives humans, what drives men, what drives women, and reproduction is important on both sides. They just have two different approaches to it. And so, the science, how our brains are wired, also operates quite at an unconscious level. And so these drives you cannot blame men or blame women for the way that they operate from a sexual point of view. Having a better understanding of each other would be probably more helpful.
Yeah, I mean, at our very core, we're heterosexual mammals. We have a primal instinct to mate. And, all of that research that's, I guess, commonly known as evolutionary biology or evolutionary psychology is very interesting. Sometimes it points to a rather low view of the social aspects of man and woman in terms of, we're basically just using each other, and women will, be hypergamous and actively trade up a male partner if they find one who's a better choice because we're just animals. And sometimes the MGTOW guys kind of beat women over the head with that kind of psychology. But indeed, we've had guys like Ogi Ogas on this show before, by the way, the author of A Billion Wicked Thoughts. And I think, frankly, Ogi's impression of what's going on is probably a little bit more pure a discourse, or at least a fairer one in terms of how men and women can be primal human beings at the sexual level and still be a more evolved species such that we treat each other with respect. And, that leads me to my next question for you, which is how would you reconcile this idea guys are kind of brainwashed into believing, especially in HR seminars and whatever, that, being a heterosexual man is a violent act in the workplace. Stop it. Don't even look at women. You're a predator even for showing up. So do better. That's what guys always cringe when they hear is do better. It's like, do better how? I mean, you're taking something away and you're not giving me anything back. Meanwhile, the women are traipsing around the office in these pretty dresses and they have their nails done and they're giggling and they're feminine and they're freely female. And obviously we can appreciate them for that. But as men, we can't escape the fact that we're male, and many of us at least are masculine. And those are the catalysts of sexual energy, masculinity and femininity. So how do we reconcile the simple biological fact, if you will, of masculinity and femininity with the fact that we don't want to be predators? I mean, it's certainly not synonymous, right?
Right. It's definitely not synonymous. Something that I talk about in my book a lot is this idea that all men are just, one sex joke away from sexually harassing a woman. I know too many wonderful men who I can still flirt with and who have absolutely no intention of ever sexually harassing. Like it doesn't even cross the minds. I think that we need to change the narrative, especially when we're talking about HR policy and training, where we cannot be communicating to men like this in this way. I don't think shaming men and making them think that they are horrible sexual predators is the right way to find a solution to just getting more respectable behavior from certain groups of men who might not know what are the good behaviors. Casting all men under this umbrella is so wrong. In the same way that you can't cast all women, like this whole all women and all men thing, that's a tough place to be. And it's hard to make solutions when there's a lot of subgroups there. But pinning people against the wall is not the way. We have to bring people back to the middle. Okay, sure, we've heard a lot about sexual harassment, so we know what it is and we know the ways in which it's wrong, but nobody has provided a how. How do we change our behaviors? Which behaviors are acceptable and which ones are not, and in which contexts? There's also no silver bullet here. There's no if you do step 1, 2, and 3, you will solve all problems in the workplace, between men and women forever. It's not going to go like that either.
Now, you mentioned a lot of ideas there that we should elaborate upon. The first one that I think is an outstandingly intuitive point that you just made is we have a tendency, especially nowadays, Bobbi. I mean, anybody who's been on political Twitter recently or, hung out with their own little echo chamber in Facebook has realized that the number one logical fallacy, there's a whole grab bag of them, right? Nobody's actually having a real sensible debate. Everybody's just basically trafficking in logical fallacy, hoping to twist somebody else's mind in the direction they want to. But probably the most common one I've seen, especially on Twitter, is because one person does this, all of them are like that.
Right.
Because 1,000 people stormed the Capitol and were knuckleheads, every Republican is an insurrectionist and a terrorist. Okay. Because there are a couple extremists on the Democrat side, every Democrat is a communist, and this is just absolutely insane. And I'm not sure how adults can really think that way and believe it. I think it's really just propaganda, designed to hopefully influence someone else to their own way of thinking. But I'll tell you, you mentioned the Me Too hashtag, and of course we've talked about that. For a while there was a hashtag, yes, all women. And then there was a hashtag, yes, all men. And the implication of those respective hashtags was that all women have been abused and all men are abusers. That's bullshit. How twisted it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's what guys are kind of saddled with. They go to work and they go to an HR meeting and every man in that room feels like the gun is pointed to their head. It's like, you see this? Don't do it. You even exhibit one infraction. And that's if you're accused of it, not if it's proven and security is going to escort you to the door. Pack up your stuff. But at the same time, it seems like every woman who's subject to one of those meetings rolls her eyes and understands that, one bad apple or a few made this necessary. You know what I mean? And so I actually, when I worked for a Fortune 50 company, was subject to these HR seminars. And every stinking time, Bobbi, I'd go back to my office and the same day, a woman would come in and flirt with me. And I'm like, what meeting did you not attend earlier in the day? Is this a trap? It's like Star Wars. It's a trap, and meanwhile, the woman's just being innocuous. And I think a lot of times what men don't understand is flirting is not necessarily a binary switch you throw. Like I'm either totally neuter like an earthworm and I'm avoiding you like the plague sexually, or, basically I'm saying nice shoes, let's screw, Women correctly, I might add, and I've talked about this on the show before, women much more often see flirting as a dial, like 1 to 10 that gets warmed up. And flirting at its essence is really just any communication that's uniquely between a man and a woman that would feel really weird and awkward between two same-sex heterosexuals. So women can talk to men like guys, and guys can talk to women like women without really even being sexual per se, let alone talking about the sex act. Right? I'm onto something there, right?
You are onto something. There's a spectrum. And this is like you were mentioning before about the echo chamber. These days we have, right now, it seems people are tending towards this binary way of thinking. Either I'm a yes or a no. Whereas actually, the reality of life exists more in the gray and like a dial. You can turn things up and turn things down. It's not just 0 or 10. There's lots in between there. And I think that there's lots of ways to be friendly. I flirt with women too, by the way. And I find that flirting, depending on the dial that you're at, can be very friendly and it can be disarming to people. And it lets people know, because we connect on a relationship basis, right? And so we connect through stories about ourselves, and that includes our sexuality. This energy emits. This is something that can be looked on as positive instead of negative when people have a different take on it, when people can change their mind about all of that. And so, indeed, it should not be, I'm flirting with you, which means I want to fuck you. No, there's lots of room in between those two things. And that goes both ways. And so we just need to learn how to dial it up and to dial it down. We also need to learn, well, different people have different boundaries, right? So some people are not comfortable with their own sexuality, and they will then project that into the environment that they're in. And so those are the type of people that you want to make sure that you understand who those are and that you respect those boundaries, as opposed to, I'm probably on the other end of that, where my boundaries are quite wide. I'm quite open. I'm open to conversation. I'm open to questions. I'm open to flirting. I'm open to a lot of things because I'm very secure in my sexuality. And when someone is offering or asks me on a date or whatever, I'm totally fine with just saying no, thanks. Like I'm okay with speaking up. I'm okay with saying, hey, I didn't like that. Or, hey, I'm giving you consent for that. I can communicate my boundaries very clearly so that men know exactly where I stand. There's no guessing. I'm very clear. I think a lot of women aren't clear on where their boundaries are. And so if they were more clear, then men would know, I can make a sex joke with her. With her, I cannot. She's open to flirting. She is not.
Well, I think there are several things there to discuss, and they're all interrelated. First of all, I do honestly think a lot of guys have been hardwired, especially through pickup artist literature and videos out there, to believe women are all incredibly socially adept. They got socializing figured out. So in their mind, there's no such thing as a woman who isn't very good at this. But I agree with you. Some women haven't got that figured out. They don't really necessarily know how to articulate boundaries or that they're interested or not interested. The second part that I think is indeed interrelated with that is a lot of times I think guys are also afraid that women are out to get them. They're out to trap them. They're out to get them fired. It's an aggressive act on women's part to just do away with men. And I know you don't like this culture of man bashing, and we'll get to that, but park that for a second as we complete this particular thought, because we'll get to it. And really, honestly, I don't think I've ever been flirted with by a woman and had her bait and switch me. If anything, women are very protective of their sexual comfort, as it were, and I don't think they'll lead on a guy they're not interested in having flirt back. So that's another thing I want to put out there. And also, again, this piggybacks off the same topic. You've really woven such a rich tapestry so far, Bobbi. It's really wonderful. I don't really think a whole lot of people, per capita, really are offended by this, at least at the baseline level. I mean, if you do something like grab her ass or, say nice tits or something like that, I think any red-blooded woman would be put off by that, without consent granted, of course. Now, that said, I've had women grab my ass in the workplace and think it was perfectly okay. But I just don't see all these offended people in real life, certainly not in the numbers that I see on Twitter and Facebook. And finally, you mentioned something that I'm sure perked up a lot of antenna on guys. You flirt with other women. And, I have this sort of semi-joke. It's a running one that I've cracked several times over the years, that you're out with a really good-looking, sexy woman when the waitress at dinner flirts with her more than she flirts with you. You know what I mean? So women, I think a lot of times guys are really confused by this idea of, women can flirt with each other and they may not necessarily be bisexual or homosexual. It's just that fun, playful celebration of femininity together, right?
Yes, that's it. Exactly. And I mean, so just going back to one of your earlier points about women have had this sort of femme fatale, when you express your sexuality, this equates with manipulation. This has been a long-standing sort of issue with women, which I think that's sort of when you think back, why women have sort of swung the other way. It's like, well, now I feel I have to completely claw back my entire sexuality, because if I don't, that means I'm going to be considered, I'm sleeping my way to the top, or she's flirting to get her way, or manipulative. And 99% of women aren't doing that. And so then they just go the way other extreme, completely back, close it off, button up the shirt. You can see how that's sort of playing out in a way that is quite stressful for the situation right now. Not all women have it all figured out. For sure they don't. That's a false assumption. And it's a bit of a tricky environment right now. But I think if we all sort of start to embrace and learn a bit more about how to interact with each other, then I'm going to flirt with anybody because I'm a sexually open person. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to flirt with her because I like her or I want her or him. It just naturally comes about because of my own personal confidence.
As you were talking, something occurred to me that I've thought about, kind of in a cursory manner in the past, but I don't think I've really fully developed the thought until just now. And, it may not be a fully developed thought. Certainly you could riff on this after I drop it on the table. Every once in a while, as a guy, you'll get a job where there's at least one woman who's just absolutely sexy as hell. She's just made for sex. She's so absolutely sexy at her very essence that she's just not safe for work. She's a distraction to even work around. And I have found that a lot of times those women are extra protective of their sexuality at work because they know who they are and they've experienced the response of normal red-blooded heterosexual guys towards them. And here's the thing though. I've been out on dates with women like that and found that even in the context of dating, they're still in that habit of reserving everything, buttoning up the shirt all the way to the top and just making sure that they don't get anybody in trouble or even themselves. And it's not because they're playing keep away with their sexuality, because, they're horny just like anybody else undercover, but it's just a habit they've cultivated. And I'm not sure it's because they're angry at men or somehow offended by men's sexual interest in them. I think it may be equally attributable to they don't want to get men in trouble. They don't want to be an instigator of this sort of thing. They just want to keep the peace in the workplace. And I doubt any guy ever listening to this has really ever considered that possibility.
Yeah, that's the thing about humans, is that you just don't know people's past. And so you don't know what they really think unless you actually have a conversation and ask them. But it could be exactly that. It could be that they don't want to have to reject you, because if they get a lot of offers, that also means that they have to dish out more rejections. And nobody feels good about doing that. I mean, when you got to do it, you got to do it. And hopefully people do it in the most respectful way possible, because people have feelings. But I'm going to imagine someone like that does get a lot of attention and a lot of offers. And so to try to avoid that, she's trying to communicate her boundaries. When I talk to people about this topic and this book, and you alluded to this before, most people agree with me that things have gotten out of hand. We don't really need to be acting like this. Like, most people are quite comfortable with a sex joke or a compliment, or you want to ask me out, that's cool, I'm not into you, but can we still be friends kind of stuff. Like, all of this it's happening anyway. Statistics show people are getting together at work. It's the second most popular way of finding your partner or your spouse. There's high statistics about people actually having sex at work with other colleagues. So this is all happening. This is all happening in a consensual, respectful way, because people are humans and they want to get together. But I think that men should start to maybe relax their opinions. Not all women are out to get them. Not all women are trying to pin them to the wall for a sexual harassment case, and vice versa. Not all men are about to sexually harass you. You don't need to keep looking for clues so that you can call them out left, right, and center. And so we just need to get away from the extremes and come back to the middle and maybe communicate a little bit more.
Man, those gotcha people, they just suck.
They do.
People are just looking to ruin someone else. Like, get a life, get a hobby, find something to do, move along. It just drives me nuts that people could not only deign to live a life like that, but impose it on others. And yet some people do, more people on social media than I think in real life. But, you mentioned two things there that I want to go ahead and talk about. The first one is people meet their spouse at work often, even in this environment. And I think a little bit of how that works, if not a lot bit of how it works, let's be honest, is, man, when two people are right for each other, there's no stopping them. I mean, they just connect. They sort of just click. They know, they get each other. And really, this wasn't a hassle. The whole idea of, oh my goodness, this is the workplace, pen, company, ink, blah, blah, blah. I mean, when you meet someone and they're the person you've always been looking for, usually the other person, if they've got it together, at least to some degree, will agree with that. And you're off and running. I mean, all the rules go out the window from every dating book you've ever read in your life, right?
Totally. Yes. And this is happening. This is happening frequently.
Yes, absolutely.
And even people are, it's happening not just a partner or a spouse, but even just consensual sex.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I was giving an example that I think would be easily relatable, but sure, there's a lot of gray area there, and every situation is unique. Every pair, every couple is going to be unique. And, the skill of reading the room is paramount here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I could also go back to, how we have these extreme points of view and social media and this binary way of thinking, I just want to remind everybody there's a power element here. Gotcha people have an agenda. The people on social media who want to give you scary numbers and scary statistics, they have an agenda. They're trying to move something forward. They're trying to get people to follow them. They're trying to get votes. They're trying to do all these things. And most of us aren't existing on those edges. We're all in the middle, just trying to, figure it out.
I think there's a good point that's warranted here. Gentlemen, if your boss wants to fire you, if they want a good reason to get you out of the company, they're going to find it. And as soon as you start feeling that cold wind on the back of your neck, it's probably best to get your resume out there and start looking, because they're going to find a way to force you out, whether it's micromanaging you, whether it's false accusations, or, this specter of sexual harassment. Unfortunately, if they're a particularly unethical boss, they can either set you up or they can drum something up, and you're not going to be able to fight it. And although I think these situations are not the norm, and they're certainly unethical, I just think when it's time to go from a job, you should just leave. I mean, don't make it hard on them. Otherwise, if you get slapped with a sexual harassment setup, that's going to follow you. Whereas, if you read the writing on the proverbial wall, you would have gotten out. And I think that brings us to a specific situation that these guys are going to come at me with torches and pitchforks if I don't address, Bobbi. And you're in Montreal, a couple 100 miles south of you. Over an international boundary, there is a certain embattled governor of the state of New York right now, Andrew Cuomo. Mm-hmm. His problems all started with how he handled the nursing home situation in COVID. And then all of a sudden, after so many years of being governor of New York, woman after woman is coming forward saying, oh, this guy is a sexual predator and, he needs to resign. And I've talked to several guys who are absolutely terrified by what's going on, because all they've really heard is that what this guy did, what Cuomo really did, just seems like rather overt flirting. I mean, he didn't put his hands on women's private parts. He didn't rape anybody. He didn't sexually coerce anybody. It's mostly what he said and who he said it to and maybe some of the circumstances. But then, man, they want him out, and this is how they're going to take him out, right? How would you characterize the pattern of events here relative to Andrew Cuomo and the trouble he's in, the hot water he's in, relative to what most guys are going to experience in their daily life? In other words, is this more about them really just wanting to get him out? Or could Andrew have made a few choices that were a little better? Did he overstep the boundaries? Let's draw those boundaries for these guys. What's really going on there?
Well, there's a couple things. So number one, like you said, and actually I made a social media post not too long ago about some science behind flirting and negotiation and how that can actually help in negotiations. And I got some pushback from men saying, if I dare to do that, like it's going to be over for me, and all of that, and the manipulation and all of that. And the thing is that if someone wants to manipulate you or do something to you, whether it's sexual harassment or otherwise, they will find a way to do it, right? So manipulators are manipulators regardless of the tools that they use. If somebody wants to get you out or put you in a corner for some reason or another, get you out of the company, etc., they're going to find a way, whether it's sexual harassment or otherwise. So that's just the case. That's kind of a human power thing, notwithstanding. Cuomo, the issue here, he's in a public position. So when you are in the public eye, you have to be extra careful and extra vigilant in the behaviors and the things that you do. And that's always been the case, even before all the sexual harassment stuff. You just have to be more careful because when you're, especially in politics, there's a war going on. Politics is dirty. Like when you look on the inside, the things that people don't actually ever see, what goes behind the scenes is quite nasty stuff. And people are willing to go to certain lengths, deep lengths to get their way in politics. And so you have to be very, very careful and very smart about it. So you have to keep it clean, just 100%. But what it does, the negative effect that it has, is then when it comes to putting a hand on a shoulder or a hug during a celebration, okay, maybe you shouldn't be hugging just the young girls and not also everybody else. But then that gives people ideas that when they go to their workplace, what would be a very casual, non-meaningful anything or rather touch by another person, they start to learn, oh, if somebody touches my shoulder, that's sexual harassment. And then you go back to your regular workplace where regular things happening with regular people, where there's not all of this nefarious activities left, right, and center. You get this sort of misinterpretation of what are acceptable behaviors and what aren't, because they're sensationalized on the news. So it's a slippery slope down that road.
Yeah, you mentioned the word politics and people automatically think dirty and complicated. I mean, indeed, the term office politics, when those two words are juxtaposed, inherently means something dirty and complicated and, negative. So, yeah, 100%. When you're actually involved in politics, you got to be absolutely on the ready for the other side of the aisle to just want to pounce on you for whatever they can come up with. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you 100%. Before we dive into that, however, I want to backtrack a little bit and acknowledge that sexier women who are, say, pharmaceutical reps are going to make higher commissions.
Oh, yeah. I have a whole chapter of that in my book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, deal with it. Men, you're going to have to use the tools you have available to get better in your sales position or further your career. But, sometimes women are just sexy and it helps. But back to the only tangentially related topic, Andrew Cuomo. Several things, just rapid fire here. First of all, he's 30 or 40 years older than any of these women he's hitting on. Mm-hmm. Second of all, he is in a power position, which is inherently creepy because women are sensing this guy's, manipulating me because he can. And third of all, let's just be realistic here. His timing is terrible. You don't just walk up to a woman and say, "Can I kiss you?" There's a dance to be danced there. And I think that picture of him with his hands on a woman's face is over the line. I don't think you go around touching women. And Bobbi, a lot of times guys have been told, hey, that's how you stay out of the just be friend zone. You go around keynoing women. You get them used to your touch on first dates. And you know what? Not so much. No, not so much. You got to read the room. Again, you got to read the room. I mean, there are some women that are touchy-feely, and they're okay with that. And they're okay with also telling you when you've touched an area on them that they don't want touched. But most women aren't like that. And so you have to be mindful if you are touching women for what reason, right? Is it because you're just a natural touchy-feely person? Or is it that you are trying to lead them down a pathway? Or is it that you just genuinely like them? Like, you have to think about intentions as well. And usually those types of things that Andrew Cuomo is doing, this is the power thing. And also people forget that power corrupts. When you are at certain levels, your sense of ethics does start to slip a little bit. And so executives and people in power positions would be well served to have someone on their staff
It sort of keeps that in check.
Yeah, and Cuomo reported, hey, you know what? I'm Italian. I put my hands on people's faces. But what Cuomo's overlooking isn't about him. It's about the other person's comfort. Mm-hmm. So he's going to have a little more self-awareness than that.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Something you just mentioned is the concept of a woman being okay with you touching her certain places and not others. True or false? If a woman touches a man's body somewhere, he can touch her in the same place. If she grabs my ass, can I grab hers?
Well, here's the thing. So in the same way that we should not shame men because they like to watch porn because their brains are wired to visual cues, in the same way we would not shame a woman for reading a romance novel because those happen to pique her cues. There's a double standard, and that's okay. If a guy is okay that I touch him and he's okay with that, great. If he touches her in the same place and she's not okay with that, that should also be okay. Like, there won't be one rule that works for both.
So what you're saying is we should mind our peaks and cues.
Peaks and cues. Yes, I see what you did there.
I think that's a good place to end this before we make everybody groan in rapid succession. Her name is Bobbi Bidochka, and she is the author of a fantastic book that I can't recommend highly enough called Sexual Intelligence in Business. And what I want to do is I want to point you to Bobbi's website where you can see a picture of her and figure out more about what she's got going on and get a copy of the book on Amazon. And you can do that by pointing your browser to mountaintoppodcast.com/Bobbi with an I, Bobbi. And guys, guess what? I am also going to put Bobbi's book at the top of the queue on my Amazon influencer page, my bookstore for you guys that you can reach by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon. Bobbi Bidochka, what a great conversation. I think we just about covered it, and we did that in record time. So thank you so much for coming on the show today and engaging us in what I think is an absolutely essential conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure, Scott.
And gentlemen, I want to point you also to mountaintoppodcast.com. Check out what our good friends at both Heroes Soap and Origin in Maine have going on. Both of them have released new items just in time for spring. Clean up with Heroes Soap, dress up, and power up at Origin in Maine. You can visit both of those websites through convenient links at mountaintoppodcast.com. Use Mountain 10 when you purchase anything supporting those who support this show, and you will get 10% off. And while you're at mountaintoppodcast.com, listen up, gentlemen. I've talked to so many of you guys over the years, and what you all find out when you talk to me is I'm exactly who you think I'm going to be. I'm a normal guy. I'm easygoing and laid back, and I've been at this for 15 years, and it's time that you think about how you can do better with the women in your life and get done what you want to get done. Listen, I have friends who are business coaches. They charge $50,000 and $100,000 to coach guys so they can get an ROI of maybe 1 million or 2 million on their investment. Working with me only costs a fraction of that. And listen, here's my guarantee to you. You're going to end up with $1 million woman. She'll be worth $1 million. She may be priceless to you. Matter of fact, I hope she is. It all starts by going to mountaintoppodcast.com, get the ball rolling by talking to me free for 25 minutes. You click the red button in the upper right-hand corner, get on my calendar, and let's get you the woman in your life that you know you already deserve. It's all there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.